Okay, my glasses are very important. Okay, so I want to introduce, a lot of you know Bill. Bill Luliano spent 27 years in the Air Force, and he retired in 2012 as a lieutenant colonel. He has over 2,000 hours in fighter aircraft as a weapon systems officer, 10 trips to the Middle East, including Operations Desert Storm, Northern Watch, Southern Watch, Provide Comfort, Bright Star, Noble Eagle, Enduring Freedom, and Iraqi Freedom. Currently, Bill works for Draken International. He's flying an A4 Skyhawk in the Nevada desert and training range, and flies helicopters as a flight instructor. He's going to tell us a couple of his stories and show some pictures of his career, and most of them are centered around flying. Very intriguing what this man does for a living. I think you're going to really enjoy this. So where's Bill? Here he comes. So let's welcome Bill. Most of you know him. He volunteers here at the museum when he can.
Thank you, Sue. It's an honor to be up here amongst this crowd in this tremendous venue that I love coming to every month. I started volunteering here when I retired in 2012, and I don't show up to one of these without shedding a tear. And Rico, I did with you, thank you. Thank you for your service. And thank all of you for your service and what you've done for our country. It's just a tremendous amount of energy in this room, being with these people in this venue, and I just love it. And I'll come here as long as I can. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit, tell you some stories from my past. Can everybody hear okay? So I had my first flight in an aircraft in 21 September 81. I've accumulated 3,500 hours of flying time. Hope to get another 3,500 hours before I pass this planet. And I've got, like she said, 2,000 hours in fighter aircraft, and most of the presentation today is going to be stories about that. I know Pig Rat's heard most of these stories already, so he's going to get to hear them again. I retired in 12, and for the last 4 years I've been flying helicopters. Took my first flight on my 50th birthday, and I've been doing that ever since, instructing. So I love doing that. Helicopters are cool. So I do want to do one thing. If you served in World War II, can you raise your hand? Thank you. If you served in Korea, could you raise your hand? About the same number, maybe some of the same people. If you served in Vietnam, raise your hand. Quite a few. And if you served in the Persian Gulf, could you raise your hand? All right, thank you. Love doing that. Okay, this is the first squadron. I was commissioned in '85. And I went to Upper Hayford in England. It's since closed. We flew F-111s. We had a bomb dump full of nuclear weapons, and we were trained to use them. There's East and West Germany, Cold War going on, and this is the group here. The guy that's standing on my shoulders, sitting on my shoulders, is Smitty, but that's me back there. Anyway, we had all our aircraft in hardened aircraft shelters, and we could go anywhere we went on the weekend. Any NATO base, just take the jet, there's a gas card in the door, and go have some fun. So we had a lot of fun. This is a weapons training deployment. So every year we would spend 3 weeks in Turkey and 3 weeks in Spain doing weapons training deployments. And what this aircraft has on it is 3 SUs, and each of those green look like gas tanks are bomb dispensers, and they have 6 BDU-33 25-pound bombs. And so we have 18 bombs on there. And we go to the range and we drop them. We'd say, okay, on the first pass we're going to do a radar laydown, and everybody would do it, and they'd all get scored. And then we come back, we bet a quarter on each pass. So it was kind of fun. We go out and drop 18 bombs. The story here is that white bomb. Yeah, that one right there. So does anybody know what that is? Anybody seen one of those? It's called a BDU-38. So that is, for all intents and purposes, a nuclear weapon. It's a very expensive training round. It's got everything a B-61 nuclear weapon, 500-pounder, has except for the pit. It's got the uranium or plutonium in it. Very, very expensive. When we drop these, there's people at the range. They come collect them, and they take them back, and they send them back to Sandia Labs, and they rebuild them, and we get to drop them again. So they're 100% accountable. So at the bottom of the slide, I say aardvark queertrons. So the F-111 was kind of funny. It had a lot of stray voltage, and we call it queertrons. It's probably not politically correct today. It's not a politically correct crowd. But anyway, this voltage would just like, every now and then, would fire, and something would fall off the airplane. So we had to do like certain maneuvers when we were throwing master power to go drop the bombs. And on this one, we're dropping at Konya Range, and 10 miles prior to the range was the Efes factory. Does anybody know what Efes is? It's Turkish beer. It's kind of okay. It's got a lot of formaldehyde in it. Wicked hangovers. Anyway, the only thing out there on this range in the desert, 10 miles prior to it, was this tall building, the Efes factory, and a parking lot next to it. So we said, 10 miles, we're going to throw the master arm. We're going to come in. You drop this BDU-38 first, and then they collect it, and then you go drop the other 18 practice bombs. So we go into the range. I'm number 3. This is number 2 here. 1 comes across, spot 1. In other words, the guy on the ground saw it come off. No spot 2. That's kind of strange. Spot 3, spot 4. So 2 didn't drop his bomb. So he looks out, and his bomb's gone. And so we join up on him, like, yeah, your bomb's gone. Like, uh-oh, we got to go find the bomb. So we start circling the wagons. We get further and further out. And in the Efes parking lot is a BD-38 stuck right next to a car at a 45-degree angle with its chute hanging over it. And we're like, oh no. So we call the ranger, like, get down to the Efes factory immediately, get that bomb. So he sends the crew out after it, and the Turks took it. So we never got it back. So the Turks, in a sense, have a nuclear weapon. All they need is some material to put in there. September tanks, we had one time we'd carry gas tanks, and we'd put our weapons in training mode when we weren't dropping. And we would go out in England, and we had to burn off some time, so we had extra tanks, gas tanks. And so the squadron commander and the operations officer go out one day, and they do practice deliveries on these bridges in Scotland. And they come back, and they pitch out and land, and the supervisor finds, like, dudes, where's your tanks? So it turns out in training mode, they dropped 6,000-pound gas tanks on these bridges in Scotland. So, queertrons. Luckily, the gas tanks don't fly like a real bomb, so they landed a little short. So. And then my favorite one is at Nellis, queertrons. These guys are going out, they have 12 live 500-pounders on their bomb, on their jet, and they're flying a standard instrument departure, and they're going between the subdivisions. You know, they take off with these lives. They have to turn and kind of fly a safe escape, if you will, through the Las Vegas metropolitan area. And so when they come out of burner, they hear a clunk. They're like, that's kind of weird. So yeah, it's when you came out of burner. So they're talking to each other, and you go back in the afterburner and come out, another clunk. They're looking at the engines, like, I didn't see anything. Did you see anything? No, I didn't see anything. So they go back in the burner one more time, come out, clunk. And the Wizzo looks down at his weapons panel. He's like, we just dropped 3 500-pounders in Las Vegas. And luckily they were flying the standard instrument departure correctly. So they were just dropping and going low order in between the houses in the washes. So lots of queertrons. One of my favorite stories, we landed at Erding, which is near Munich, and we spent the day there. We were coming out in 2 F-111s. I was the number 2 guy. And we're taxiing up the taxiway, and we never went to the end because there was a hill. There's like a little hill there. So we always pulled off on the first taxiway and then took a little shorter runway, taking off, coming back. So we always did that, so we didn't have to go up this hill. F-111's a pig. It's 32,000 pounds of gas internal. So anyway, we're coming down there. We're going to take this taxiway, and a German F-104 lands opposite direction. We have a beautiful F-104 back here, the silver one, in the other hangar. but this one's German. And he lands opposite direction, pulls off on that taxiway we're going to use. And so now we have to go to the end. We have to go up this little hill. So lead puts in power, a little more power, a little more power, way too much power to get up this hill. And as he turns, the exhaust goes up this hill, and there's these German Sea Scouts sitting on the top of the hill, and they go blowing over the hill. And he keeps swinging his butt around, and there's a wooden guard shack, and it explodes. Just boom. Luckily, nobody was in it. And I was sitting there with my mouth open, and the German F-104 pilot gets on the radio and goes, "Wunderbar." Like, get out of here. Let's get back to England quick. Okay, I got to fly in Desert Storm. I flew out of Turkey. I flew 17 missions dropping bombs. And this one, my father owned a restaurant called Eddie's Old Tavern, Italian restaurant. This says, "To Saddam." I wrote on the bomb, "To Saddam from Eddie's Old Tavern, buon appetito." I did another one for a brother that has a dental business. He makes teeth. It said, "To Saddam from Adirondack Dental Ceramics, say ah." This is the guy I flew with, Tom Polis, TP. We were part crewed together, and we flew together for months leading up to it. And we led a lot of the missions because he was a major, and I was a brand new weapons school grad. Those are two 2,000-pounders behind us. Carried drop 4 of those at a time. That's pretty neat at night. Chunk, 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 chunk. 8,000 pounds of bombs going down. TP, after the war, we didn't see each other, but we kept in touch. And I finally ran into him about 6 months ago, so it's kind of neat. He lives in Montana. At Incirlik, we had a composite wing, and these are all the people that flew in the war from Incirlik. We got the F-111, and then there's two forms of F-4 back there on the left. There's a RF-4 for reconnaissance, and they would run through and take pictures after we drop bombs, and we could assess how we were doing. And then there's F-4G Wild Weasels, and they were actually from the Idaho Guard, and they would jam, they would do suppression of enemy air defenses. They would come in and stop the SAMs from shooting us. There's an AWACS back there, yes, KC-135 tanker. The C-130 is a compass call, this guy here, and he would listen, passively listen. They would fly just inside the Turkish border, and they would pick up transmissions and relay the stuff to us. And we had, and you can see the fins of F-15s way back here, and we had F-16s. So we had a composite wing. We'd all brief together, and that concept was carried forward to Mountain Home after the war. They started a composite wing there because it worked really well. Can you go back one? So I flew 17 missions. They're all pretty interesting. But one story I want to relate was the second night of the war, January 17th. We went in and we were hitting oil refineries at Kirkuk. And so what we did is we flew across Turkey, and then we came down the Iranian border, and it's at night, it's like 2 in the morning. We're up at 30,000 feet. We're as high as we could go. And we're flying down the Iranian border. We're about to make a right to go to Kirkuk, and AWACS calls bandits taking off out of Baghdad, flying east towards Iran. Well, the F-15 caps were already in place, so they went to engage these guys. And I was pretty excited. It's like 40 miles off my nose. I was going to see these planes blow up. This is a beautiful night, full moon. And 2 F-15s roll in, and they lock the lead, IL-76, and the number 2 IL-76, and they fired 2 missiles apiece, AIM-7s, and they hung. So maintenance loaded these missiles wrong, and they just hung on the jet. They never came off. Let me tell you, those guys were pissed when they got back, and I was pissed because I wanted to see this great display in front of me. after the war, I went to the Strike Eagle. I went from the right seat as a weapons system officer in the 111 to the back seat in the F-15E Strike Eagle. And I got 1,100 hours in that. Good time there. When we were there, we went down to Thumb Raid. This is Oman and the Saudi Arabian peninsulas where the F-15Es were based during Desert Shield. And so we went down there. We took 8 of our 16 jets and did an exchange. And I got to be the range control officer one day, so we were heading out to the range and I saw the sign. I'm like, stop, gotta get a picture. Back there again in 92 with Hoot Gibson, still Facebook friends with Hoot. I got my hands on the lantern pod, so that's how you could see at night flying low to the ground, is that forward-looking infrared. And underneath it is the radar that commands the terrain-following radar that we use to steer down to 100 feet above the ground in the mountains in the weather. But the FLIR, if there's no weather, you can see pretty good. And Hoot's leaning on a GBU-12 laser-guided bomb, 500-pounder. This is how you golf in Saudi Arabia. We're Air Force officers, so we got to golf no matter where we go. So that's a Saudi golf course. There's no grass. You can't grow any grass in Saudi. So they oil the fairways. You can see I'm hitting from out of bounds there. I wasn't very good, still not. But you carry a little rug around with you and you go pick up your ball and you put it on the turf, a little square patch of turf. And you can see just past my club on the left is the green, and there's a little guy sitting there in a chair, little Abi, little third country national. And when you get done putting out, the putting greens are amazing. They putt just like grass, but it's sand. And when you get done, he grabs his rake and he goes to the hole and he starts raking in a circle, in a bigger and bigger circle, and he rakes out the whole green and then sits back in his chair and waits for the next foursome to come up. So, two big no-nos they teach you when you go to Saudi Arabia is when you greet someone and when you wave to someone, this is cool, this is not. Left hand's your dirty hand. No one's left-handed in Saudi Arabia. And you never want to show the bottom of your feet. So we're all waving with our left hand here. Actually, the guy that took this picture was Jay Silveria, Tonto. He's a 3-star in charge of the academy. You might have seen his video going around. Anyway, good guy, Tonto. All right, the USS Nimitz. So when I was there in '93, got to do an exchange. Sue, I'm sorry I didn't keep the time. How am I doing? Okay. So I got to do an exchange. So they took 2 F-15E crews and then 2 A-6 crews off the Nimitz in the Persian Gulf. And they came and flew F-15s, and 2 of us went onto the boat, so, or ship, or whatever it's called. I think it's a ship, right? It's a ship. Okay, you're corrected by the Navy guys. It was pretty cool, but like I wrote here, the flight deck is an accident waiting to happen. Who's ever been on a flight deck? Quite a few. Yeah, so we show up in this helicopter, land, and then we go below decks. And you have no idea what time it is because there's no windows, right? So after I've been there for 3 or 4 hours, guys like, hey, you want to go watch some night carrier landings? I'm like, sure. So we go walking through the ship. I can't lose this guy because I'm lost. It's a maze. Anyway, he opens his door and steps out into the darkness. And I'm like, oh, shit. It's night carrier landings. Okay, I got it, night. So he steps out and he walks up this little ladder. It's got like 5 steps. Makes a right and he's on the carrier deck. So I'm following him. I make a right and I hit my head on the fin of an AGM-88 HARM missile that's hanging off another A-6 that I didn't see, and I cut my forehead. So I kind of take a knee, and he doesn't see this. So I stand up, I take 1 step into like a 2 by 2 foot hole where a panel was removed, and there's no cones or anything, and I fall flat on my face on this deck at night. I hit my shin so hard on the far side of this hole, It hurts way worse than my head. And now my hands and knees in this like muck of oil and filth, and I'm trying to pick my head up, and a plane lands. And I'm telling you, if I had anything in my bowel, it would have been extricated right there. And he turns around, and he sees me, and I'm like, come back! So he comes back, and I go, don't leave me! And I grab him. So we limp over to the LSO platform, which is like a 10 by 10 square, landing signal officer. There's like 15 people in there. So I go, and I work my way to the back to collect myself, and there's like a little rope railing. And I'm standing there, I'm like, my leg is throbbing, really hurts. And I focus, and there's like ocean down there. And 40 feet below is like this net to catch you. And all there is this piece of rope. I'm like, oh my God. And I go back into the middle of the crowd, and I grab it, and I'm like, dude, have a briefing next time. Kill this Air Force guy. So I got to fly. I spent 4 days on the ship, and got to fly with this guy on the right, Boris. Boris was a cool dude. When we flew, you know, these are Vietnam era A6s, and we're flying brand new Strike Eagles. So these guys are trying to be cool. Like, you know, I'm an Air Force guy. You can't impress me with your shit, right? It's an A6. He's like, when I take off, I like to lean forward in the shot. I recommend you keep your head back against the headrest. Like, okay, whatever. He's like, you're gonna feel like all your organs push against your rib cage. And I'm like, okay, this guy's bullshitting me. He's trying to make me nervous, right? So, who said no? So we line up, and I can't even keep up with the signals and who's controlling us as we taxi around, get on this thing. And we're in an A6 bomber that has a gas tank that we're passing gas to other people. And so it's super heavy, and we're on the angled cat, which is the short one. So it's like supposed to be like the hardest shot you can get, whatever, right? So we line up, and we shoot off this carrier deck. I was so thankful my head was against the headrest, because it would have snapped my neck. And I felt every organ in my body, I'm like, oh, that's my liver, push against my rib cage. And I tried to scream like a little girl, but nothing came out. It was the most incredible thing I've ever felt in my life. I'm like, okay, he wasn't trying to scare me, he was just briefing me. It was pretty cool because the Hornets came up and the Tomcats and the A6s, and they all got gas, so I got to run a little gas thing. And we came back to the ship, we pitched out. I brought my 110 camera up, took this shot, put it down, and boom, we were in the one wire. So they have 4 wires on the end of the boat, and they drop the hook, and they want to try and catch the 2 wire. So Boris wasn't the greatest pilot, but he was way better than anybody I ever flew with. He's a frickin' Navy pilot. This is a Nimitz again. Anything different? Anybody notice? That's from the back seat of a Strike Eagle. Okay, so after 12 years flying in the Air Force, I went into the Idaho National Guard. I separated from active duty. And I spent 12 years as a JTAC, a Joint Terminal Attack Controller. And my last 2 trips to Iraq, of my 10 trips, were 05 and 09 as a ground forward air controller. So I've got my M4 rifle, I've got a 9mm on my leg, I've got an emitter radio, you can see the antenna there on the right side of my body, little mic switch. The weapon's got an infrared laser pointer. So it's not just like put the red dot on somebody, that's the M68 scope on the rifle. But it also has, when you pull your NVGs down, it's got to put a green dot on the guy, and he can't see the green dot. And you don't even have to bring the weapon up and aim it. You just keep it down at your hip, you just put the green dot and shoot. It's kind of cool. Anyway, I spent 2 trips walking through houses with the Army, and had fighter aircraft overhead. Did that for 12 years in the Guard. My last trip in '09, this is kind of my last story here, is I got bored after about 4 or 5 months. We did a little bit of bombing, but not a lot. The Iraqi Air Force was forming, and they had these crappy kit airplanes called Sama CH-2000s, and they had a little sensor ball, and they were concerned about Iran. So they would go along the Iranian border at Basra and search they were building bridges across the swamps and all kinds of stuff. So that's mainly what they did. I grabbed an interpreter, went over there on a whim, introduced myself, and I became great friends with this guy that's in the picture, Colonel Sammy, on the right there. And he was a squadron commander, and that's him there. A good dude. We kept in touch after I left, but a really nice guy. He's a general now, in charge of the base there at Basra. So he had this picture outside his office. It's behind us, and it's got all these aircraft. It had Mirage F-1s, MiG-21s, all that kind of stuff. And I asked him what that was, and he said, this is what all our pilots flew before Desert Storm, and now they're flying these little kit planes. And I said, Sammy, what did you fly? And he pointed to the IL-76 there, big transport. And I said, oh, did you fly those in Desert Storm? He said, yes. On the night of January 17th, we took off out of eastern Baghdad, and we flew our planes to Iran. And the hair stood up on the back of my neck. And if you remember the story I told you from Desert Storm, the F-15s rolled in behind those guys, and Sammy was in the lead airplane. And Sammy survived that night, and he didn't know what had happened. So before I left, and all the guys in the squadron would ask me, did you serve in Desert Storm? And I said, no, I didn't. You know, their family members could have been killed during the war or whatever. I just played it safe and said no. So before I left, I had this Idaho plaque made up, and it says, it's got a broken pair of diagonals on it. It says, praise Allah for faulty maintenance. Major Sammy, 17 January 91, my enemy. Colonel Sammy, 17 July 2009, my friend. And I gave it to him the day before I left, and told him the story. And I'll never forget him going, me? I'm like, yeah, you. So I switch gears now. What I'm doing today, I just have 2 slides left. This one, I'm flying helicopters. I'm a flight instructor. Like I said, on my 50th birthday, I had my first flight. So I've got over 1,000 hours now doing that. Love it. Helicopters are a lot of fun. And this is Draken down in Vegas, the company I work for. And they bought these old A4s off the New Zealand Air Force. We're actually the largest fighter private Air Force in the world. We have almost 100 fighter aircraft that we fly, and it's a growing industry. But anyway, I do that 2 weeks a month for those guys down there. So, all right. Any questions?
What do you do for 2 weeks every month when you're down?
So Sue asked what I do. Mostly I'm operations supervision. So what I do is, we had a thing in the Air Force called the top 3. Whenever fighters are flying, either the squadron commander, the DO, or the deputy DO is sitting at the desk, working the radios. If they have any emergencies, they call back. They do all the coordination with maintenance, weather, all the base agencies. So mostly I do that. I monitor the flying. I'm in charge of the flying. I can tell them, no, the weather's too bad, you don't go, or I get airspace for them. I just do all the coordination, and they fly. And once a week, I get to jump in the back seat of the 2-seater and go fly with them.
Why the private Air Force? What's it used for?
So it's kind of an interesting concept, and I could do a whole presentation on what's going on there. But when I flew the F-15, we do air-to-air. We go out over the ocean. We do a 4-shift. And so 2 guys, we go to one side, and 2 guys who go to the other side, and they go, okay, on the first intercept, you be the F-15. We're going to be MiG-21s. And we do MiG-21 tactics. Then on the second intercept, we're going to be F-15s. You be Su-27s. And so they would play the flanker role and do Su-27s. So you'd waste half the flight playing the adversary. And an F-15 costs $25,000 an hour to run. And so when the F-22 and F-35 came out, these aircraft are $100,000 an hour to run. So my company came along and said, we can do this for $7,500 an hour. And the Air Force immediately went after it. We did a month trial, and then we've done 3 6-month blocks. We just got a 5-year contract with Hawaii. The Air Force wants to put these aircraft at all of the training fighter bases in the US, done stuff with the Netherlands. We have 2 jets in France. It's pretty big.
Yeah, it is big and growing, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I want to give you this coin from the Warhawk. It's been an honor, Bill, to have you here. Thank you so much, and have your family. Thank you for your service to our country. And wow, what an interesting career you've got going on. Isn't that something? Pretty interesting stuff. Thank you so much. Just a couple of announcements here. You know, veterans, next month is Veterans Day. That means